started. Stream has started.
Okay. You right to go? Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. A warm welcome to everyone in attendance and for those watching live at home tonight. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we live, work and play. We pay our respects to Darkingham country, elders past and present. Recognise the continued connection to these lands and waterways and extend this acknowledgement to the homelands and stories of those who also call this place home. We recognise our future leaders and the shared responsibility to care for and protect our place and people. Right in the beginning. I remind councillors and all those present that this meeting is being live streamed and your image and what you say may be broadcast live to the public. Please be mindful of your actions and your comments. You should avoid making statements like defame or offend, and note that recording this meeting will be taken online and in council archives.
You're not streaming the meeting yourself, mate?
No.
Just your voice is echoing.
Oh, okay. Please turn off your mobile phones or switch to silent. Filming and photography are not permitted in the meeting. Anyone observed to be filming may be asked to leave. Okay, so that's the introduction. We've got an apology from Mayor McKenna, and I believe the other, we don't know about Councillor Smith.
A message on that's all right.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Are you on your way? That'll be 5 o'clock. I know.
I'm you, eh?
It's 5.
Get online.
Well, we've started. I've just tried to text and now I've rung you, so I don't know what. Yeah, all right. It was 6. She's on her way.
All right, well, so we've got a motion as up there to accept the apology from the Mayor and the request by Councillor Stanton to attend by video and Councillor, that should be Councillor Crowley, that should be. So if we can change that, part 3 should be Councillor Crowley. Oh, and Councillor Neal's come in online, so yes, we can add her too. It'll be Councillor Crowley and Neal.
Happy to be.
You. Okay, that's there now. I was moved by Councillor Moreland, seconded. I'll second it. Any debate? I'll put all those in favour. Unanimously, although Councillor Stanton has now joined us and she's voting in favour at all. So that is carried unanimously by the member. All right, we're on to disclosures of interest. Has anyone got any disclosures of interest? I'm not going to go around the table.
Disclosures.
Right, sure. Noted that there are no disclosures. I also have no disclosure. Minutes of the previous meeting. Item 1.6, moved by Councillor Merland. I'll second again. Debate. All those in favour? I've lost Councillor Yeah. Oh, yes, there she is.
Sorry, having trouble with my video. Just give me 2 minutes. But
Yeah,
I'm
that's okay. I can see your hands up. So that's Councillor Merlin, Councillor Stanton, Councillor Eaton against, Councillor Castles, Councillor Walsh. I'll declare that carried. Okay, now we have we've got matters by exception. So we have got presentations on 2.1, the biodiversity, Burns Road 2.3, and of course there's an amended report for 2.3. 2.4 is actually an error because we've already dealt with that, but we'll just have to note that. Asbestos has got a presentation, I think. Yes. And the open pile burning has got a presentation.
I want to make a suggestion on that. So it might be a presentation.
So that leaves 2.2. Do we want to discuss that? That's the miscellaneous amendments.
2.8 state significant developments. I do have a question, so I don't want it taken
No,
out.
that's fine.
It's okay.
Right. Anyone want 2.2? I'll come back reading that one. Finished. 2.7 planning proposal statistics. Anyone want that? No. 2.8, I think we need. 2.9, the pesticides.
Oh, I got the wrong number.
Councillor McGregor wants that, so that's okay. I'll take that on board.
Yeah, thanks. Coming up, 2.8, 2.9.
2.10 is development assessment statistics. Do you want that one? No?
211, yes, that's the one I.
That's the one you want? Yeah. And 212, obviously we're having a presentation on. So that would leave to deal with by exception 2.2, the miscellaneous amendments, 2.7 planning proposal statistics, and 2.10 development assessment statistics.
Let's double check. The castles, you still want 2.8?
What was that, sorry?
You want 2.8?
2.8, no, the transport related development. I'll put it where we.
No, I was thinking. I want to talk about that one.
Yes, it's already pulled out, isn't it?
Yes. So I'll repeat again. I've got 2.2 miscellaneous amendments, 2.7 planning proposal statistics, and 2.10 development assessment statistics. So we have to do them by exception. Councillors, you want to move that?
Yeah, I'll move that.
Thank you. Second by Councillor Merlin. All in favour? Coming on now, yes, carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, now I think we have to have procedural motion, which I'll put. The committee standing orders to consider item 212, draft open coast management program, and then consider the remaining agenda items in sequence. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Merlin. Any discussion on that? Not, I'll put it. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Okay, so I'll hand over to the director and staff to do the presentation.
So councillors, we've got a short presentation and we've also got the authors of the CMP. If you've got any more detailed questions here today as well. So Ben Fullinger, would you like to present? There'll be a little bit of overview, but because there's a lot in it, I think would be to ask specific questions.
I have a number, so these are not questions on the.
No, this is a discussion. It's a committee, so you can just ask Ben the question, he'll answer. Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Hey, just a quick recap on coastal management programs in general. They go through a 5-stage program. We're up to stage 4 in the open coast, which is the preparation, exhibition, finalisation, certification and adoption of the CMP. In terms of all of our coastal management programs, the open coast is up to stage 4 with completion this year. Tugger Lakes is also another coastal management program, coastal lagoons, the Hawkesbury and Nepean River with multiple coastal collaboration, and also Lake Macquarie, which has already been certified back in 2023 with Lake Macquarie City Council. The recap on the area that the coastal management program covers. Open coast is the yellow area, which is essentially all of our beaches and cliff lines along the Central Coast. Back in July to August 2025, the Open Coast CMP was on public exhibition. Council received a total of 240 submissions on that exhibition process. Following the exhibition and the phone survey results, and also New South Wales agency commentary, and Council has been working to update the coastal management program. We now have in the updated coastal management program 55 actions. Some are regional wide or coast wide, and some are for specific locations. As part of the coastal management program, they include a 10-year business plan for the 10-year life of the management program. The total public cost is $6 billion in total, with potential funding mechanisms such as the Coastal Estuary Grant Program or the Commonwealth Disaster Ready Fund. Of examples, the coastal management program also includes a coastal hazard study that was completed as part of stage 2. This includes updated mapping for coastal erosion, inundation, cliff instability areas. Also at the back in one of the appendices is a new coastal zone emergency action sub-plan for the region that includes triggers, responsibilities and actions for 4 phases of emergency management. So just a bit of a snapshot in terms of what are some of the key high-profile actions in the updated CMP. There's an updated investigation of offshore sand nourishment action. That's to look at more detail at offshore sand nourishment and sand sources. A number of key actions are now included for both Wombrel and the Entrance North to further outline the processes and steps needed to go through the strategy for coastal protection works at those locations. There's also an identification of existing emergency coastal protection works, including potential removal or remediation. There's an updated, following the resolution of council last week, there's an updated sand nourishment item for the Entrance North to use sand strategically at the entrance as well. And also using sand opportunistically at Wombrel and Terrigal as well. There's also planning controls, reviewing a development control plan and undertaking planning proposal for coastal vulnerability area. In terms of what that looks like in the coastal management program, there's a whole mapping section. This is just a snapshot of that for the Entrance North. And you can see the action there, which is the new wording for the Entrance North in terms of using sand sourced strategically. But there are a number of other actions for this region, steps for the coastal protection works, other steps for coastal vegetation strategy. In terms of the updated action for sand nourishment, this has been reviewed and updated with the New South Wales Government, and also Council's been working with Northern Beaches Council, and we have in principle support to work with them on this updated action. And that would work through investigating the feasibility of offshore sand nourishment, exploration license, physical sampling, environmental assessments, and a detailed business case to take that to the next phase. We'll also be looking at possible Commonwealth disaster ready funding for this action as well. This all backs the updated wording for the strategy to comprise offshore sand nourishment underpinned by a rock revetment or hybrid rock revetments where needed.
Right, Ben, sorry, can you go back?
Sorry.
We're leaving all the questions to the end, or?
If we can.
Well, I've got a few more slides then. So in terms of the Wombrel and the Entrance North actions, these have been detailed so that each of the specific steps now includes an action, those actions being engineering design requirements, the design and approval step, the construction phase, the sand nourishment phase, the regional offshore sand nourishment investigations, and also land matters at Wombrel. So in terms of the next steps for the CMP, currently on public exhibition, it went live yesterday and that'll close on the 30th of March. then will be brought to the subcommittee on the 31st of March, the 7th of April E&P committee meeting, then the April ordinary council meeting. Those steps. In terms of what it looks like on the Your Voice Our Coast, it went live yesterday, and yeah, there's just a snapshot of the process. There's a survey on there to seek feedback from the community, and yeah, it closes on the 30th.
Councillor Walsh.
So, in terms of the slide you had up about sand nourishment and being underpinned by a rock revetment, is that, thank you, is that assuming then that it's being led by, like, what comes first? Like, and does CMP actually address that? So we're talking revetment first, then sand nourishment.
The coastal management program has a lot more, outlines it in a lot more detail, that acknowledges that coastal protection works are needed urgently, and it outlines the steps to proceed with that, but it also outlines that will need to come with a strategic sand nourishment component as well to boost beach aesthetics and to work in hand with coastal protection works as well. But certainly doesn't outline that you would wait for sand nourishment to construct coastal protection works. Certainly the coastal protection works have to happen as locations.
So does that mean potentially revetment first before sand nourishment?
I can, Councillor Ross, I can answer a little bit more, because we've got the local sand nourishment programs, but they don't have the scale. So you've got at the entrance north, obviously you've got the dredging and the sand from dredging, and we've made available as a user pays for using sand Terrigal Lagoon for Wambrel. It doesn't have the sort of scale you'd need to solve for nourishment, but that's available now. So that's both available. What we're looking at, we can move quite quickly now on the offshore sand nourishment. So what we've been working out with the state government is that if the CMP is adopted, there'll be then a joint submission in the next couple of months to the federal government to get disaster ready funding for doing the next steps to get up to the approvals and mining licence for the offshore sand nourishment. So that means that work could happen over the next year. So we've got the local sand nourishment, and we think we can move a lot quicker on the offshore sand nourishment to a decision.
So to do with the local for Wambrel and Terrigal, is council confident that there's enough sand, opportunistic use of sand nourishment before we get to having any finalised offshore sand nourishment?
Yeah, I mean, we're heavily focused on getting to the point where with the state and federal government we can get the offshore sand nourishment happening. So we're definitely trying to get to that point as quickly as we can. And that's probably a difference in this new CMP but we've got the results of, and obviously it's confidential, but we've got a copy of the results of what's happened at Stockton in the pilot. So we're working with the state to progress from what they found out in that pilot into actually getting funding to get to the next step for a broader program. So it's made a lot of progress. And so it's not just that we're committing to just investigating it. There's actually been a lot of substance about getting to the offshore sand nourishment.
Sorry.
Other questions? Sorry.
No, I've got.
Okay, keep going.
Before you, Councillor Neal. So will a revetment require DA?
So what's being proposed in the CMP? You're saying revetment at Wambrel?
Yeah.
What's being proposed is showing how the sort of buried revetment would work on those different areas of those beaches. It would be subject to private individuals constructing it when it's on private land. So it would be a decision for those private individuals. But because council resolved for us to do detailed designs at Wamberal, we're progressing those detailed designs to put to the RA Minister about whether there's an approval pathway under Section 68 of the RA Act. And what's largely happening with the state is that they've been negotiating with us on how this CMP works. We've then been identifying what we think's a solution the state council would be happy with, and then we're moving to detailed designs with MHL engineering for that. That would allow the
Those detailed designs though are under the Section 68 is what you're saying.
but it's all the same structure that we're talking about. So it's the same approach, it's the same structure. The RA Minister will be able to decide in May whether she wants to accept that approval pathway under the RA Act, and that would be up for the Minister to decide that. But we'll be having a submission to the Minister about what the design that could be approved by the Minister under Section 68. If the Minister doesn't accept that pathway, it would have to go through DA pathways.
Okay, so on that, can you comment on if those designs, do they involve a sandstone interlocking? Or
yeah, we've commissioned the detailed design.
that's the reason why I'm asking.
Yeah, that's right. We've commissioned the detailed designs. We've had investigations by MHL into the use of sandstone as the materials. Those investigations haven't been completely finished yet, but it's been really good indications that we'd be able to incorporate sandstone. So the answer is most likely yes, but there's still a little bit of design work to go, but the investigations are looking really positive about it.
Those designs aren't completed yet, they're not finished. Is that what you were saying before?
Yes. Do you want to just collaborate on where the designs are up to with MHL, Ben?
Yeah, I got indication about 2 weeks away from the preliminary design report, so that'll be the point where we can present to, in terms of that collaboration with the agencies, with the RA as well, in terms of that process.
So in terms of negotiations, has that been with individual beachfront owners or with the WPA as a representative group? They're actually not a representative group.
Council's leading the design of them with input from RA and the Department of Environment. We've consulted with the landowner group, and when we get to and let them know where we're up to and what timing they'll see them, and they've provided their preliminary feedback. We've told them generally the sort of things we've talked about in the CMP out in public, and what will happen is when we have the preliminary design in about 2 weeks, then there'd be a discussion with landowners about the feedback into that design before we find.
Okay, last one. And I think it has been asked before tonight, but now it's gone out of my head.
We go to Councillor Neal and come back
Yes,
to you.
please.
Councillor Neal.
Yes, just on that previous slide, if you wouldn't mind just taking it back one. It refers to 3 million. Is that an individual cost for Central Coast Council, or is it going to be also contributed to by the Northern Beaches Council?
That's total costs, so it doesn't include any contributions, whether it be from another council or from the Disaster Ready Fund. So that's a total estimated cost.
Yeah, so Councillor, just to clarify, that's the money we'd be applying for from the federal government's Disaster Ready Fund, which would be supported by the state government as a priority application. It wouldn't have any money from Central Coast Council or Northern Beaches, but we would be providing in-kind input to deliver on the grant funding.
Okay. Just one question. I know you sort of mentioned this before, Director, but is there any capacity or pathway to apply for approval of a revetment or seawall apart from through the Restoration Act? You said before that they required a DA. Is there any other pathway that could be pursued other than that?
Yeah, so Councillor, we've been working with the state on what the solution that would be acceptable along the Womberall stretch and also at North Entrance. So we've had their feedback as we've been developing the CMP. When certified by the Environment Minister, the CMP becomes a sort of a head of consideration when DAs are being considered. And it's very much set up to be quite specific about what would be acceptable from a development application point of view. So that's so there is the pathway to get approvals through DAs being lodged. We've also got the other pathway because of the emergency declaration that we can make submissions to the RA Minister for approval under Section 68 of the RA Act. And we're going to be making an application with detailed
No, I'm
design.
aware of that. I recall that from last time that there had been an indication from the New South Wales government that that was unlikely to be agreed to. I suppose what I'm trying to establish, if we don't or we aren't successful in doing that, even with a CMP which envisages that sort of construction, someone will be required to lodge a DA. And firstly, is that correct? And secondly, who would lodge the DA? Is it individual property owners or someone else?
Yeah, I mean, individual property owners can lodge development applications. The getting to a certified CMP supports what the form of that would be approved by a regional planning panel. But just on the RA Act pathways, what's in discussion is whether the RA Minister can approve it as a temporary structure for a number of years or as a permanent structure. There is the potential that some structure to allow construction can be done by RA, and we've been working with RA to be able to get a submission that the Minister could consider. So that both pathways are still open, the RA pathway and the DA pathway, and we'll be positioned to test them.
But the indication from the RA Minister's office was that it would have to be very much a short-term infrastructure. Yeah, is that the advice that you have in the negotiations with the department?
Yeah, Councillor, what we're doing with the detailed design is we're doing variations of the design that could be approved as a temporary structure. Ones that could be approved as a permanent structure. So we're doing that so that the RA Minister has the ability to consider both. But yeah, we're showing what variations would look like if it was approved as a temporary structure, if the Minister wasn't proposing to approve as a permanent structure. In that scenario, we'd like to get to the point where coastal defences could be put in place and then DA processes could be run when there's some protection.
And how do you define, what do you define as temporary? What sort of length of time
It's open. It's open at the moment, Council, but it could be there for a number of years. But I think in North Entrance there was a time limit. How many years was it?
I thought it was 6 months, wasn't it?
Yeah,
3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years, Councillor. Up at North Entrance was defined as temporary. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's quite a long time, really. Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
I'll come back to Councillor Walsh.
And this has possibly been asked and answered. The amendments that DQ sent through and suggested, have they been integrated into what's gone out on exhibition?
Yeah, correct. There was one that wasn't, which was just in a clarification in relation to the offshore sand nourishment action, but that was sort of, I guess, a suggestion rather than an absolute request at their end. So
it's like a pretty important one.
The action was essentially just to say that the action in terms of the next steps of the delivery program, I guess, beyond the feasibility. And what we said was that we would add some words there to say, following feasibility, council would do this rather than have an actual action for implementation. So, yeah.
So sorry again.
So the answer is yes, they were all included. There was some further discussion about one of them where we came up with the intent that DQ are happy with. So all the intent is in there.
Okay, and just back to that question on dealing with individual beachfront owners or the WPA. I don't feel like I've got a clear answer on that one.
Okay. Can you just go through what the consultations happened so far and what's proposed?
Sure. Yeah, at this stage we haven't got the material, I guess, to be consulting with all the individual owners. There've been some preliminary discussions with WPA, but there'll be some further discussions around that, and then some advice to all owners will go out about the process, and then the opportunity for all owners to be involved in the decision making as part of that project.
Further questions, councillors?
Sorry, Chair.
Mr. Smith, yes.
Are we at the beginning, middle, or end of the presentation? The end. Could you start again?
Sorry, councillor, we can't do that.
Just that last slide that you had, I did just have that question about, there was a resolution of council to work with coastal councils in general. I know that just mentioned Northern Beaches. Are we not liaising with the other coastal councils about potential offshore sand nourishment and I think it was a task force?
Yeah, we've been liaising over with the broader investigations with the coastal councils. What we've looked at with Northern Beaches is they're happy to partner with us with a grant application to the federal government, specifically to do approvals and potential mining licenses for the offshore sand nourishment. We needed sort of physical proximity to the councils that we were going to deal with, and we also wanted a council that could bring a bit of scale to it as well. So we've mainly agreed with them to do that grant application, which will sort of, I suppose, reduce the costs just purely for Central Coast Council.
Okay, so are we still pursuing a task force? And I think the intention was to try and get the Commonwealth and state government to take more of a coordinated role for everybody, really.
We're still in the broader investigations. We're still working with that, and the state are doing broader investigations than just this. The Northern Beaches is primarily about the grant that we're proposing to do.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. There's actually no recommendation with respect to this, and given us a presentation, I don't see there's a need to move anything.
Is the presentation going to be on the phone?
Oh, that was another question I forgot to ask.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, yes. So that brings us back to, and for anyone in the public who wants to leave, they're welcome to do so. You're also welcome to stay, but that's the end of the presentation on the coastal management plan. And same as anyone's online, again, if you were here just for that, then that's the end of the discussion on that item.
Thanks.
That's it. Okay, so we're back to biodiversity stewardship for Fortis Creek wetland. We've got a presentation from
Michelle, the environment team. We'll be giving a quick overview and then be available for any detailed questions you have about the project.
I just wanted to give an overview of Council's participation in New South Wales Biodiversity Offset Scheme. So the reason for the committee report was that in February last year, we had a resolution to present progress biodiversity. Why isn't that right?
Rochelle.
Rochelle.
Can you speak up a little bit, Rochelle?
Are you driving the slides here, Michelle?
Just your arrows.
Just the lag, I think.
Are you presenting?
you say? It's mostly the.
Stewardship agreement for Woods Creek.
But the car that went in before.
Be able to answer questions like that. So this is
Just need to get access to that.
the staff from the biodiversity team. So
Not my meeting, so
First slide. So the reason for the committee report is that we said that we would come back to you on the progress on the stewardship site for the Porters Creek wetland. So that's what the report's about. So just to back up, what is the biodiversity offset scheme? It's a mechanism to avoid, minimise and offset development. And it applies to all development in New South Wales. And how council can be involved in that is by generating the credits that developers need to offset their development, and we can do that on council reserves. And so we have so far 4 of these agreements of the 366 that are in New South Wales, and we've generated $7.8 million worth of credit sales. So the impacts to vegetation must be offset, and the rules around how that's done is what the biodiversity offset scheme that lays out, and the cost to developers to do that is calculated through a thing called a total fund deposit. And so how that's calculated is all of the management costs to improve biodiversity on a site for in perpetuity. And once credit sales meet this amount, then the site becomes active and we start receiving funds. So just to explain all that again, there's a total fund deposit, which is the amount that it costs to look after a site and improve its biodiversity in perpetuity. And that agreement generates biodiversity credits. They can be ecosystem credits or species credits. Council can sell those credits on the market. Once we have sold enough of those credits to meet that fund deposit, we then enter into an active phase of an agreement. We start getting annual payments from that fund. So that fund is held by the department called Biodiversity Conservation Trust. They start paying us annual payments to manage the land and look after the biodiversity. If we have extra credits or extra value of credits, we can also sell those, and they are considered profit and they are not tied to the original site, and they can support broader environmental programs. So the kinds of things that we get paid to do on these sites: weed control, pest control, fire, and illegal access and illegal use of our reserves. We have 3 of these in progress. So there's Bacali Road, which is in an early draft, Kenmare Road, which has been submitted to the department for review, and Porters Creek Wetland, which has just commenced. And it's the largest, most complex site that we have attempted to date. So just to put all that into perspective, in Warrnambool, the green is the biodiversity stewardship agreement site. The red is the Warrnambool floodplain, and that is potentially also going to be part of the stewardship agreement. That's what we're working through at the moment. The airport master plan is in orange. The Warrnambool business precinct is in purple, and then there's the Link Road extension. So there's a lot happening in Warrnambool, and they do overlap. And so how this is related to the airport, the biodiversity certification over the airport upgrades has been lodged, and it will, what that report says is that there are biodiversity credits that are required. There's an obligation on council to retire those credits or buy those credits. And so the biodiversity stewardship agreement may be able to provide the majority of those credits to the airport. And there will be extra credits that the airport doesn't need, and those will be available to council to sell on the market.
So Shirley, you taking questions as we go?
You don't have much more, do you?
There's one more slide.
One more slide.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And so the investigations are underway at the moment. Will conclude by the end of the year, and we'll have a report to council mid next year. And then also in parallel is one of our floodplain master plan studies, which are about to commence, and there'll be a community consultation on that. And the final message is that the sale of these credits really present an opportunity to drive biodiversity conservation in the LGA.
Okay, Councillor Smith.
Just the previous slide. So can I just be clear, the white outline is the outline of the Warnervale Airport master plan, I'm assuming. I wasn't aware that we were going to be clearing additional vegetation for that. Is that what we're now saying? I wasn't aware that that was the intention. I understand the OLR needs to be included, the obstacle limitation boundary, but are we clearing more vegetation than was previously understood?
No, so that's a map out of the report that was lodged.
Yeah. So report lodged with the Biodiversity Trust?
With the department.
With the department? And so so that's doesn't quite answer the question. Did that map come from where?
Is that the map from the BCAR?
Yes.
Yep. So that's the BCAR that was lodged with the Department of Environment about what happens on the airport.
Yeah. Came from where?
Yeah.
That map came from where?
BCAR report.
And who did the BCAR report?
Yeah.
And which part of council?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that. Who did the BCAR?
The property and development.
Okay.
So the people who are running all those steps of the airport master plan, one of the steps was do the BCAR, and just like most developers, then get agreement from the BCAR with the State Environment Department, and it's in that process at the moment for them feedback about the BCAR and whether they're satisfied with it or not.
Okay, so can I get a copy of that?
Just what I'm putting in today.
Councillor request, but I'm assuming there's no problem with getting a copy of that BCAR.
I'll investigate that for you, Council, and get back to you about.
You think there might be a problem with me getting access to it?
I just don't know, Councillor, but I will investigate that and be able to get back to you about whether we can give you a copy.
Can I just have a
Councillor Castles
on this? So with this map that we're seeing here, where clearly there is extra vegetation, as Councillor Smith mentioned, that as far as I'm aware is to be cleared. I know that you've mentioned, Director, that it's in the BCAR report or assessment stuff that we put in, but when we were looking at the original airport master plan matter, was this map which showed extra that amount of clearing, was that part of our determination? Because I don't in any way remember seeing that.
Yeah, I'd have to get. Oh, that's what I don't know who you're asking. But
that's not. The presentation is not quite directly about this, but that's the area that the BCAR is subject to.
It's actually
blue.
Within the
Topic line is white.
report a year ago.
Okay. We could come back with more detail on the airport master plan. I suppose we were focusing on the stewardship agreement for this.
Just to be clear, my understanding was that it was the existing footprint of the airport that was the subject of future plans, that we weren't increasing the footprint. So that is my concern. That's why I would like some clear.
Yeah, well, we can come back with more information about the BCAR if you like.
Councillor Castles.
No, it was
Oh, sorry, Councillor Walsh and then Councillor McGregor. I apologise.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, Councillor McGregor. Yep.
The little blue bit on the other side of Sparks's Road, is that on the button side?
I'm not sure.
Yes, it is.
See where the Central Coast Council logo is on the other side? Yeah, the one you're pointing.
It's further west than that.
So is that land owned by council or not? Yeah. And then with it being in blue, what are we required to do with that? Because that looks like the land on the Bunnings site where the council trim the trees for Bunnings because Bunnings refused to pay for it. So the reason why I'm asking this is this now making us responsible for managing vegetation on someone else's land, even though CASA said not to do it 6 years ago, we're somehow going to be responsible for someone else's property and what happens to it.
So the only reason that map is there to show you that there's a biodiversity certification process going on as part of the airport master plan. I don't have the staff here that would know any more detail than that. They're being managed by another area council.
Okay, all right.
But I mean, I'm not trying not to answer your question. I just don't have the people here that can answer.
No, that's fine.
A question on that.
Completely accept what you're saying. My concern would be that we are taking on additional responsibilities by stealth for someone else's property when we know that we don't have to. It seems like a strange position for a council that keeps saying they've got limited resources to want to adopt.
The only purpose, council, for us to do a BCAR would be to actually get approval for something on council land. That would, I mean, in some ways, the BCAR is getting the certification from the Environment Department about how you manage the biodiversity. So it would only be for council land. We wouldn't be doing it on that, but obviously I don't have the details here.
If we can get the details, it'd be good to know if that's possible. Thank you.
Councillor Walsh.
So, sorry if I'm confused, but the way I'm hearing this is that the biodiversity offset framework is advancing ahead of the broader floodplain master planning process. Is that accurate? That's right. And if that's the case, then is the biodiversity stewardship being used as basically a mechanism for airport development rather than as a large-scale conservation strategy?
So the council, so the green area there, which is where the biostewardship agreement is where we'll be committing over the next year to an agreement that protects that land in perpetuity and allows significant investment into management of weeds, controlling access, and the way it's sort of the staff often describe it is it's making sort of the green greener. So we're making it better biodiversity outcomes in that Porters Creek area. So it protects it in perpetuity. A benefit of it is we can also sell credits by having protected it in perpetuity. Those credits can be used by the airport for resolving issues in their BCAR and how they develop their site.
So I've got some questions about those credits. So listening to you, I'm thinking, well, my next question was going to be about the primary objective of the conservation, but you're saying it is Porters Creek protection.
Yeah, it allows funds to go into the management of that area that wouldn't be available otherwise.
So in terms of finances, do we have an estimated annual management cost of that 1,000 hectares of stewardship?
So that's the numbers that we're working through at the moment, but we think that the TFD amount could be $10 million.
So council, so that means that approximately 10, we sort of said 10 to maybe more, so 10 to 20, would manage the Porters Creek wetland area in perpetuity. So,
annually?
Yeah, well, if you had that amount, it would allow you to manage it in perpetuity. So we'd obviously be investing in it.
Okay, so probably shouldn't be asking about a projected 30-year costs then.
It's based on 20 years.
20, okay. Wondering because, wanting to ask questions about how it gets funded long term, but I think that's been answered. I guess I want to come to any shortfall or any underperforming of the credits. Like, where does that leave ratepayers? Is it going, do we feel confident? Is it a yes or no that ratepayers would ever be liable for any of this?
So the biostewardship agreement would be means that the investment that we do in Porters Creek to protect the site would be funded through credits. and there's significant amounts of credits that would be interested
As
in.
David was saying. That.
Yeah, so no, we're not. There's no situation where we would ratepayers would be paying for the biostewardship agreement.
Okay, so that's on record now.
Anyone want to jump in just in case? But yeah, I mean, I can't see a situation.
Councillor Smith.
Chair, not a question. I just would like to thank staff for their work. I think this is pretty exciting, and some of the councillors at the anti-environment group are very excited about the dollar signs, so that's pretty good. And the rest of us, or many of us, are excited about the protection. So it's been a long time coming, and I know it's not finished, but well done on getting to this point. That's really pretty good. Thank you.
And thanks for taking those questions. Yeah.
Any more questions? No, otherwise this recommendation just to note the report. Councillor Smith, you might like to
I will
for yourself, but
not endorse any expansion, but I won't include that, obviously. Take that as
Keep that in the back of the mind.
yeah. Take that one.
you're moving the recommendation.
I will move the recommendation.
Thank you.
That's relieved.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Merlin?
The anti-environment group.
I just don't do this often, councillor, but I just wanted to recognise Rochelle Lawson's efforts on this. She is an expert in these biostewardship agreements and a really complex matters, and is doing a sort of incredible job.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. You got that? Moved by councillor. Yep. Okay. All right. I'll put that. All those in favour?
Yeah.
Oh, I need to vote against it so we can talk about it at the council meeting. Can somebody vote against it for me, please? Would you vote against it? Well, maybe I should abstain.
I'll vote against it.
Thank you. Thank you. Very good.
All right. Okay. Okay. Those in favour, councillor Smith, councillor Merlin, councillor Eaton, councillor Castles. Can't see councillor.
Stanton, is she left?
No, she's there. Yes, I think she's got a hand up. Yes. 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 Thank you. And against councillor Walsh. So I declare that.
There we are.
Okay. Next one is Burns Road.
So, councillors.
Another presser.
Yeah, so we've got a little presentation. We're going to go through it reasonably quickly now, but you would have known that the issues around Burns Road at Ourimbah and whether we're managing the flood risk there. Council had put in lights and a range of things, but the experience in recent flood activities is that we're still getting people driving into the water. So council staff have done a review of those, and there's a series of recommendations tonight. There is the supplementary report that has also been provided that updates those recommendations, and that's because we've had a meeting of the Local Emergency Management Committee since we published the original report, and we've modified it based on their advice about some floodgates as well. So I wanted to take you through it, councillors, understand it a little bit, and then there's some resolutions about how we change our approach to managing the risk. And Parissa from the flood team is going to be presenting tonight.
Hello everyone, my name is Parissa Guy. I'm on the team with floodplain management at Central Coast Council. Today I'm going to, as Luke mentioned, present on the issues regarding orders for Burns Road when it comes to flooding. Yes, it is. So basically, if you know the area, this is Burns Road, Chittaway Road. There's a causeway on Cutler Creek, and it gets inundated quite often. In a 5-year event, it gets up to 2 meters of depth, high hazard. In a 100-year event, 3 meters or. So we basically, based on the recommendations of the Ourimbah Creek Floodplain Risk Management Study and Plan, decided to install a flood warning system, which was commissioned on the 17th of June. This is an overview of the components of the flood warning system. On that left-hand side, bottom left-hand side, you can see the gauge. So that there's the gauge, telemetry enabled water level gauge. The solar powered telemetry cabinet, which is on the top right hand corner, and it includes a camera which takes hourly images of the road, a flood depth indicator sign that was recently reinstated on the top left hand side, and in the middle, and we have 4 of these signs basically that get activated once the water goes over the road. We have a public-facing web page which displays real-time conditions. So you can see in that graph, the yellow line, or if you can see it, that's the road. And when the water level goes up, it basically shows it. And it activates all of those. There's 4 of these signs in the middle, road closed ahead, when flashing, when flooding, when flashing basically, and that is, there's 4 of them. The signs, this is a plan of where the signs are located. One is near the university. As we are coming along Burns Road, on Nelly Road, near that camera that I showed you, there's another sign. The camera and gauge are here, and water level gauge is here. Camera is a little bit further away, and on the eastern approach, there are 2 other signs on Chittaway Road. So initially, this project started with boom gates installation. The title of the project was Installation of Boom Gates on Burns Road. The reason we didn't install the boom gates was because Manly Hydraulics Laboratory, who is our consultant, basically mentioned that they have installed this system in another council, and they have come up with numerous issues, specifically when there's false alarm that basically when it's dry weather and the booms drop down, or when there's wet weather and the booms don't drop down. So there was a concern about people's lack of trust and political risk, basically. So we decided not to go ahead with this. The original report that we provided to you was before we had a meeting with the LEMC. They basically, in the LEMC, the SES and the other organizations that were there, requested to prevent flooding into floodwaters. They requested reconsideration of a formal physical barrier, like the ones that are shown here. They are either manually operated or automatic, but they were requesting that the road be closed physically rather than just flashing, because there have been some instances that people have disregarded the flashing lights. And they also requested improved flood depth indicators and additional signage to be installed there. So as a result, we basically provided a supplementary report with some recommendations. I'm not going to go through the recommendations, but the aim and purpose of this is for you to endorse or recommend to council to basically approve those recommendations.
We can take questions. I just wanted to add one thing first. So the LEMC discussion with the police, SES, RFS, and the what are they called, voluntary flood rescue, and SES. Basically, they accept that information's being provided to drivers that should warn them not to go into it, but they're still having to commit significant resources to get people out. So what they would want is the floodgates that they could manually shut. And what we do is we'd have a procedure with the first responders, whether that be SES, RFS or the police, to actually be able to close and lock the gates when we first respond to an incident. That means that the significant amount of resources that are being allocated to this in a storm will actually be able to be allocated elsewhere. So that's their interest, not that people shouldn't know to stop. They just need to make sure people stop.
So is that what they look like?
Councillor Milne was first.
The question through you, Mr. Chair, to the Director. The LEMC is primarily state government agencies.
So I chair the LEMC and for council, and we provide the local environmental management committee coordinator, but it's the police, the SES.
So the recommendation for the boom gates, has there been any commitment from the state, or have we sought funding through the state for the boom gates?
We've for the installation we've had a grant, and that's been about $185,000. We've got money left over in that grant to actually look at whether that we could actually allocate to this. So one of the recommendations was we write to the grant providers, saying basically requesting that we can use the rest of the grant that's been provided to actually fund this activity. So yes, it looks like there'll be state government funding that we can use to do this.
Councillor Smith.
So in generally very happy with that, but I did just notice in the report that it said closing the road is not an option. Can you just remind me why closing that road is
Permanently.
Yeah.
So this House Road, if I can please.
Yeah, if you can just go back to that map. Yeah.
So House Road, which is here, if we close that, these lots will be isolated.
Oh, so where do they get their access?
Here. So they come out near the underpass.
Yep.
On the other side of the railway.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're in beside of the road. Well,
So and this is the map of flooding. So that's House Road, and they are in.
And they don't have any other. There's no other route that they could get access. Okay. All right. No, thank you for that.
Councillor Smith, there's only one line in the report. The safest option would be to permanently close the road, but this would have a permanent negative impact on traffic movement and was not recommended.
Yeah, well, I didn't quite understand the traffic movement because people don't need to go under the train station, the train line, other than, me doing the rat run from the university campus. But but that does clarify.
pretty busy road. Councillor Castles.
Yeah, with the physical barriers through you, Chair to the Director, you mentioned before that it would be something that, if, for example, that whoever was the first responder that got there would have the ability to close those off. But I'm just, I suppose, having a bit of a question about that, because if you're there as a first responder, you're there for a reason. Has somebody already driven in to the water and you're closing it post event to stop other people doing such a thing, or what? How are you envisaging that would work?
What happened is you saw what happens is when the water rises above the road, we actually have advice of that.
Yes,
so
I knew that bit.
There'd be a procedure that would go through the LEMC for when water got to a certain point, one of the agencies would go out there to close.
Okay, so otherwise it didn't sort of quite make sense.
So we get notification of as it's happening live out there, and there'd be a procedure of at X point the police would send someone out to lock the gate. Or
so we wouldn't be sending, council staff out in the middle of the night to do it, for example.
We've said to the emergency agencies that we wouldn't necessarily want to be responsible for the response as an urgent matter, and they've said they're happy for a procedure that triggers one of them to actually be the ones that do this, because they're the ones that then actually it would save them significant resources later.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Stanton.
Thank you. Whilst it's not directly relevant to a flooding situation, I think that if we're discussing money and traffic movements, we should potentially consider sending this to the Infrastructure and Assets Committee. This is a particular road that I have previously discussed with the director of that committee. This road, for other councillors that don't know it, it goes underneath the train line, and it's actually like a one car system. So there's a stop sign and cars come in one direction, and when it's clear, the other ones can go. It's quite a dangerous intersection. And then if we're talking about a flood situation, I definitely commend the recommendation, including further lighting, because that's a big a danger zone. But if we are talking about this same intersection, I think it's worthwhile considering other potential impacts and other maybe mitigation measures that we can do in terms of that traffic issue and that one car system that is quite dangerous.
Yes, Councillor McGregor.
Just a few questions, if I may, because this is of particular interest to the Rimba residents group, and they've raised this several times. I've got a request in at the moment about it. Just reading through the recommendation here, is this going to come to the next council meeting? When is it going to get to the point where we can actually make a decision at a full council on that?
Yeah, so it would come to, what is it, March, the March council meeting. So the minutes from this meeting go up in a couple of weeks to the council meeting.
Okay.
Yep.
And then what kind of level of engagement have we had with the on this? Basically, because I know that at their March meeting and they're talking about their April meeting specifically focusing on this. So have we had much contact with them about this?
If council is comfortable with the recommendation, it says investigate the options with it. We do some consultation with different stakeholders before we landed on how the gates would actually work and what we'd implement. So there's still work and consultation to do, but it's definitely the recommendation of the LEMC that we need to look at the floodgates. That's different to what council's position's been before.
Yeah, I understand. And I'm, without speaking on behalf of all the different people in that group, I think they'd be quite happy with that because they're actually follow up on sort of curious timelines and consultation on that.
Yeah, we'd go to council, go through that. We'd make sure the funding bodies don't close off the balance of the grant funding, and then there's a chance to then consult with different groups. We've got a bit of work to do in relation to a procedure to go through the AMC about how the closures would happen, and we can actually consult with different groups. So if you want us to consult with different groups, we can definitely do that before the final thing is concluded.
Okay.
All right. Oh, sorry, Marissa, what about?
So, for you, Councillor, we have done some good letter drops and consultation with the residents in the vicinity of Burns Road. I can't recall how many, but in the order of just under 1,000 letter drops, and we received only 2 responses from them. So that's good.
Yes.
But we haven't discussed this with it. We haven't raised this with anyone at this stage.
Yeah. Councillor Milland.
I just got a question to Councillor McGregor. Councillor McGregor, have you got a feeling if the community is supportive?
The correspondence that I've received from the executive of the group is that the current system is inadequate and they think that more should be done. And I'm sure they've got lots of different views on that, but they've got a meeting tomorrow night and then I know they've got a follow-up one in April and they're going to just have a discussion with the group about it. And they'd like to see something stronger. So if this is going to end up with something stronger, with temporary closures or something like that, I'm sure they'd be happy with it, but I don't know till they've had their meeting tomorrow night. They can follow up on it.
More discussion, any questions?
I'd like to propose a part 4 recommendation.
Right. Only got having 2 parts at the moment.
In the supplementary, there's
Yeah, I've got that as
3.
Alec 3, so I'm not sure.
Yeah. It's Alec 4 then.
It's Alec 4, right. Okay, and?
That council write to the grant providers to utilise leftover grant funding to fund the project.
No, what is that?
If you look at 3, councillor.
There is 3.
So 3.
Three.
Sorry,
Am I looking at the wrong recommendation?
Are you in the supplementary papers?
Page 42 of the Australian.
It's definitely there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I was in the
I
original.
know.
So you'll move the recommendation then, councillor Milling? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, I'm happy to move the
Seconder? Councillor
Wait,
Coates?
but can I,
Stanton, yes, sorry.
as I mentioned before, I would like to propose that this be sent to the Infrastructure and Assets Committee for consideration of traffic considerations that could also facilitate better movement, particularly in a flood situation.
All right, well, you want to add that to it, or you haven't got any problem with it?
I did. I mean, my advice to the committee is not to do that. This matter is a flooding matter and is clearly within this committee. It's been recommended by the local environmental emergency management committee, and the preparation of the report has been done in consultation with infrastructure services. So I would have thought this committee is the decision-making committee, and we've had input about roads and traffic management. I'd be concerned. Not about that there's a chance to talk to others, but I'd be concerned that there's broadening out to address other traffic matters. I'd rather we would just focus on addressing the flood risk, which is really critical. Definitely we can have further discussions about the broader traffic, but in this regard, the grant funding would really only be able to use for flood management.
I understood from councillor Stanton, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you were really talking about looking at the broader traffic issues in your committee, weren't you, councillor Stanton?
That's correct. And I think for me, if this is something that I'm going to be considering regardless in that committee, I think it would be wise to consider that in light of expending funds for this purpose of flood, because if there is a change to the road potentially, that may also impact the use of this money.
Clarify also for councillors, we're not proposing to expend council funds. This is the grant fund from the state. So it's up to councillors to what you want to do.
And the grant fund is for flooding purposes.
Flood management, yes. So it's a floodplain management, risk management fund from the state.
So councillor Stanton, do you want to just lift it for your committee? Like the whole issue of Burns Road, I'm not, rather than this particular issue, I would have thought.
Yeah, so not this as an amendment.
No. You happy to go down that track?
Yes, I guess I'm just concerned that this money that's being spent, grant funding, fine, but if the road is amended elsewhere within council, that will have an impact on using this grant money. But sure.
It's got to be used for this sort of purpose, is my understanding. Okay. So I'll leave that up to you as the chair of the committee. Obviously, you can put that on the agenda yourself. So we've got a move by councillor Milne. I think it was seconded by councillor Carson. So any further discussion? I'll put all those in favour. Councillor Smith.
Somebody's got to vote against stuff at the council meeting.
Sorry, councillor Stan, I can't see if your hand's up or not. So if you could just say.
Well, are you including my point or you're not including it?
No, I was leaving it up to you to bring it to your committee.
But it will have an impact on this expenditure.
Say.
I don't think it can, with respect. That's my understanding. And the staff are saying, no, it can't.
Vote against it.
Anyhow, yeah, vote against it. So I'll put it like this. Councillor.
Stand voting against it?
I think so.
I think so.
Councillor Merlin, Councillor Councillor Walsh, Councillor Eaton, Councillor Smith against Councillor Stan. Oh no, I think he's in
My
favour.
hand is up.
Hand is up. Sorry, it was unanimous.
I'll abstain then. I'm abstaining.
It's called.
It was unanimous.
Get asked.
Okay.
Put something on.
Oh, asbestos next, is it? Oh.
What's that?
Yes, you're right. Asbestos is next. 2.5.
Vote you.
So, councillors, because of the sort of the importance of the asbestos policy, wanted to get a presentation for you just to go through some of the elements of it. Lee from the environmental compliance team is sort of doing the presentation. You're getting to meet all these staff from EMP that you've never met before. So Lee's the absolute expert on this.
Councillors, can you hear me okay? I noticed the mic's not on.
Yeah, okay.
Actually, as Luke mentioned, Leah Hitchens is my name, Section Manager, Environmental Health and Systems. I work closely with Jen Mitchell, who's the Unit Manager, as you're aware, of Environmental Compliance Services. And I'm here to speak tonight about the asbestos management policy. It has been around for quite some time. It was developed in 2017, and it's been selected for review and amendment. So firstly, I just wanted to speak to, sorry. There we go. Most importantly, I wanted to speak about the health and why we actually have this management policy. And the first and foremost, it's protect public health. So public health of the community as well as council employees. The health risks of asbestos are widely reported, and I'll just go through them very briefly tonight. So you may or may not be aware, inhaling airborne asbestos fibres can cause serious disease. So that includes asbestosis, lung cancer, mesothelioma, very nasty stuff. These illnesses usually develop after many decades of higher repeated exposures. And I guess the key message today is that asbestos risks are understood, and they are preventable when asbestos is properly managed. So generally speaking, asbestos poses minimal risk when it's in good condition and not disturbed. And the health risk really only arises when the asbestos material is damaged or disturbed, releasing the fibres into the air. And most of the asbestos-related disease reported these days is from historical exposure before the modern safety laws that we have in place today. Okay, I also wanted to talk about the regulatory framework. So Safe Work New South Wales is the statutory regulator for asbestos in workplaces. So a person with management and control of a workplace, as in council, has a legal duty to identify, assess and manage asbestos risks. So the idea is that asbestos must be eliminated where reasonably practicable. When that is not possible, the risk needs to be minimised and effectively controlled. There is a requirement for an asbestos register to be present, which council has developed, and that records the location, type and condition of asbestos containing materials in all of its assets. Okay, so what are the legislative requirements? As I mentioned earlier, there is some really strong legislative framework in place in New South Wales because of the health risks associated with asbestos containing material. So it has been banned in Australia since 2003. Work health safety legislation requires asbestos risks to be identified, assessed and controlled, and that's under the framework of the Work Health Safety Act and the regulation. Now, there's a multidisciplinary approach to regulating asbestos. So not only does Safe Work have regulatory powers, council does as well. And also as an employee, we're required to have an asbestos management policy. So the policy that we are bringing to you tonight does not introduce a new risk. It's just to ensure council meets its Safe Work New South Wales obligations. It provides clear guidance to staff and contractors, as well as the community, on how to safely manage asbestos risks. And the approach ensures asbestos is managed safely, transparently, and in line with best practice. Okay, have we consulted? Yes, we have. So public exhibition was undertaken from the 11th of August to the 8th of September last year. We received 305 reviews of the draft policy and 4 submissions. So feedback was generally supportive of the policy. As I said, it's nothing new. It's just more amendments were made to the existing policy. The key themes that were raised in submissions were increased action regarding asbestos on public land, improving signage, having a stronger, more authoritative approach to asbestos management, and then the consideration of free disposal options to reduce illegal dumping. Okay, what are the impacts and changes? As I mentioned, we did go out to public exhibition and we considered council feedback. We also considered feedback in a council meeting last year, and we also undertook additional internal consultation because we did go back and make some further changes to the policy. So in short, there were minor wording changes to improve clarity. We updated legislative references, some were outdated, so that's been completed. And we've also updated those outdated links. So this policy reflects council feedback, as I said, internal stakeholder input. It includes the current legislative requirements while maintaining the overall intent of the policy, which is to protect public health. Why should it be supported? So the policy is based on the model asbestos policy for New South Wales Council. So that was developed in 2012 by the former Local Government and Shires Association of New South Wales. It provides a consistent framework for managing asbestos risk across our local government area, not only for council, but also the wider community. And it also supports council in meeting our legislative obligations relating to asbestos management. That's the end. Any questions?
Questions? Yes, Councillor Smith.
Hi. So I've worked my way through as much as I can in the policy, but I will be honest and say I haven't gone through all the material. You mentioned one of the issues is asbestos on public land, and I just asked the question because I know it's going to get asked by the community, and I'm sure it already has. Situations such as Wampool Beach, where there's been a history of asbestos on the beach. How does the policy approach that? And I'm just seeing that it's in there, but it's sort of doesn't look as if it's got a way of fixing that.
As I mentioned, there's a multidisciplinary approach to asbestos. So for Wampool Beach in particular, there's quite a number of agencies and a number of different legislative requirements. So asbestos loosely falls under, as I mentioned earlier, Work Health Safety Act regs, but it also falls under the Contaminated Land Act as well as Protection of the Environment Operations Act. So depending on where the asbestos is located and whether it's friable or non-friable would depend on council's response. So it's very complex, but I can speak to council is conducting regular collections of asbestos. So when we're alerted by the public or after significant storm events, we have crews going out and new picking asbestos. Then when we have development applications that come in on that beachfront, it's flagged that there could be legacy asbestos along with other waste material that's in that dune foreshore area. And that will trigger a requirement for a contamination assessment.
Okay.
We'll go in and do some type of testing and provide reports back to our assessment officers, and that will feed into a remediation action plan, conditions of consent, things like that. So I didn't really answer your question.
No, look, you probably answered it as best you can, and I appreciate that. Because it's one of those problems that's been difficult to solve.
100%.
So does this include a communication component around it? Have we got that?
Yes, so we provided a media release when it first went up.
Now, I mean, within the policy, part of the policy to do that education communication.
For you, Chair, if I can see that. So whilst it's not included in the policy, we do I guess, ongoing media releases or social media posts and education to the community on different environmental issues throughout the year. So particularly around asbestos awareness week, we will do, I guess, a shared consultation to the community through social media. We do that for a variety of our different issues. It might be dogs or it might be other aspects of what we do in ECS. So we do include asbestos on that. And also too, there is, I guess, an educational component within our website on how to manage asbestos and what the requirements are. So we have a web page dedicated for that as well.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor, was it Councillor Castles?
Well, just one question. During the, I suppose, consultations around this and speaking to internal stakeholders, all the rest of it, were I know many council employees are members of the union, and I'm wondering whether there was any sort of, consultation with the union as well regarding, where we were going with this policy. Admittedly, that it is an update on former policies, but nevertheless there are, obviously sometimes there are changes. We've got some changes in here. Can you answer that question?
Yes, excellent question. And yes, we did. Yes, we definitely did. We wrote to the unions, or 4 unions in total. We provided a letter and the link to the website with the draft policy. And we also provided a letter to, was it the Master Builders Association as well?
As Dust Diseases Board.
Dust Diseases Board as well. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what their feedback.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Neal.
Yeah. Yes. In terms of this policy, it obviously sets out a range of things that have to be done where asbestos is detected. My question is to the manner of detection. Does this policy only apply when it's come to council's attention that there is asbestos in one of their buildings? Or is council required under this policy to actually proactively investigate all their buildings and determine whether there is asbestos present?
If you like. So council is required to be proactive. So we, in the asbestos register, we have to go through all our assets and identify any potentially contaminating asbestos material and then confirm presence and absence through testing.
And how many of our buildings or assets have we already reviewed and determined whether or not they have asbestos, or proportion?
Actually, I don't have that detail with me, but I can provide that at a later point.
Councillor Neal, that's been the law for,
I know, but let me tell you, Chair, there are many buildings owned by council where there is asbestos and no one knows anything.
I don't know the number, the exact number, but I can later date.
If you can take that on notice, that would be appreciated. Not the number, really, well, number or proportion. Really, I'm just trying to get an idea of how much work has been done.
Yes, Councillor Neal, we can do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Otherwise, the recommendation is to obviously endorse the policy. Somebody want to move that? Well, Merlin, you're doing all the heavy lifting. Good reports. Is there a seconder? Are you going to second it? Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Any further discussion? Otherwise, I'll put it. Those in favour? Councillor Merlin, Councillor Castles, Councillor Walsh, against Councillor Smith.
Chair, I will just say I am genuinely, well, not that I wasn't genuine the other time, but I am abstaining because I do just want to give full support. I want to read the policy in a lot more detail before. I take it very seriously, as I'm sure council does. So I do want to just give that a bit more thought. Thank you.
Okay, next item is the open pole policy, open pole burning policy. And I think we've got another presentation.
No, just a
note, wasn't it, like a further recommendation?
So councillors, we've brought back the open pole burning policy. There was probably one additional resolution that we probably recommend after reviewing it again. And I just wanted the manager of compliance to just take you through what we're suggesting as an additional recommendation.
Yeah, so in the feedback that we've received from the community, there was a number of, I guess, issues that one particular community member was concerned about in relation to the policy, and has provided 3 different options for, I guess, adoption and inclusion. So the addition that we're putting forward there today is to include one of those amendments that has been suggested, and it's about education to those that are planning on undertaking open pole burning to look at what are the alternative methods that they can utilise to dispose of this waste material and explore those before they actually undertake a pole burn due to the, I guess, pollution nature of undertaking pole burning. So looking at addressing that educational piece as part of the policy, and as you know that there's a number of items within the policy that are, I guess, deemed approval conditions that they need to work through, and this will be the first deemed approval condition that is there. So that is that item 1.
That's the change you're now recommending.
Correct.
2 is the change. Is that what you're saying?
Blue, I think the blue highlight.
Change.
Yeah.
Open pole burning of dry and dead vegetation. It's not the only.
There's other ways of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the other part to one of the submissions was around the time frames for burning, and we did consider this quite strongly about whether or not we, tighten the time frame down to, and one of the suggestions was 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. only, or go with our recommended time frames, which were 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. We have gone with 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. That aligns with the RFS policy for open pole burning, and that aligns with their approvals that they do issue. So whilst you have a deemed approval from council, you still need to get a permit from the RFS to carry out a burn, and they have specific conditions relating to fire safety of that permit. So that strongly aligns with the RFS requirements.
Isn't that, I'm just a question, I suppose, but, if something goes on and can go till 10 o'clock at night, I know, having spoken to a few community members, regarding their concerns, is that 10 o'clock at night means, in theory, as it should, at least, all the smoke has gone at 10 o'clock at night, but we know that that isn't what happens. And so what ends up happening is, regardless of the fact that people may not be setting fire to things at that time of night, the smoke is still hanging around, particularly in some of our areas where you get that sort of inversion thing happening, the rest of it. I don't know, I wonder whether, I wonder whether that is the best option. I understand what you're saying about the RFS. I understand all of those things. I'm just wondering whether that really is the best option, or if there's a bit of wriggle room.
Yeah, so I guess the other part to it is considering the climatic conditions that are enabling you to carry out that burn. So there's conditions in relation to weather conditions that need to be considered before you undertake a burn. So obviously wind, temperature, all those sorts of things that need to be considered before you carry out that burn. The other part to it is that, I guess, looking at burning within our area, there are other contributors to this that we do not regulate. So you can continue to have a recreational burn in your yard without having a permit. So a small campfire style burn, people can continue to do those, and there's less stringent conditions relating to those. So there's other contributors to that inversion factor that you may see.
Just a comment. So I live on the western side of the expressway in a valley, and this happens all the time when they're allowed to do it and have their notices in the letterbox, etc. But what I find is that it's really about convenience, because it's about the gum trees, eucalyptus trees dropping branches, and they'll just put them over there and they'll build up a pile, and every couple of months they'll burn it off. I don't do that. I put it in my trailer and I take it to Buttondurry, to the greenways. It costs about $50.
That's right.
And pay it. It costs about $50 a trailer, right? So, it's convenience at some stage. The weather is the main issue, whether it's time or not. If somebody's burning off even at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and there's no wind, sorry, it'll stay in the valley. Right? So I don't know how you get across any of that in a policy. I think you got the balance right from a practical point of view on what everyone does out there. Not quite sure if we could do anything else about the alternate up here, because everyone's going to say, well, it's going to cost me $50 every time I go to Buttonderry in a couple of hours to do it. So we'll still be able to, or still need to have people pay to go and drop green waste to Buttonderry.
I guess some of that measure, if I can expand on that, is there are some properties that fit into being able to carry out a pile burn that do still have the bulk curbside collection option.
Yeah.
So they should be exploring the utilisation of those 6 free curbside collections in the first instance before they undertake a pile burn.
And do you think that is your experience that people just don't bother doing that, or do people? Is it just
it's happening?
Evidence or for that? Or?
No, look, I've actually consulted with our waste team on particular suburbs, and there has been an uptake of green waste collections and bookings in those suburbs that are part of and covered in this policy. So people are utilising that curbside service.
I guess that's part of that education thing as well, isn't it? It's to people that, to do that bit first, so to speak.
Yeah, and I guess there's an element of risk with having a pile burn in your backyard. And whether or not an individual wants to take on that responsibility, because it is a big responsibility. What if it catches on the shed or the house or the neighbours? So people do, I guess, explore other options.
Councillor McGregor, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick one. I don't know if you can answer it or not, but I'm curious because this is a policy that's come up before and then it's a new iteration of it, which I believe to be an enhanced, superior one. What level of community consultation did you have this time compared to last time? Was there more or less responses?
So it's been based off, this revision has been based off that consultation we carried out last year. I think it was in August, September last year. And I know that there was a particular community member that most of the councillors were engaged with, and he expressed his concerns in relation to what's occurring in his local area. So we did consider a lot of that feedback in that particular submission, and also the submissions that we received through the online.
Oh yeah, I can see that. I'm not calling you to question that. What I'm sort of suggesting is, was there 200 people in 2020 and there was 20 people in 2026, or if we don't have the information, that's fine. I'm happy to get it later. I'm just curious to see if people were more or less engaged in this, because obviously there was a few people that were quite keen with their lobbying, but in terms of, bigger number of people rather than individuals is sort of.
So just in summary, it was the pop draft policy was downloaded 318 times through this current consultation period. There were 357 interactions on social media. There were 2,429 views on your Voice South Coast. And
got 46. 46.
Sorry, I've got a bit of a vision problem at the
and 46 submissions.
Yeah, that's okay. That gives me a bit of an idea of what's happened this time. But do we have the 2020 number?
I don't have them.
Okay.
Then.
That's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
Just to clarify that, I pushed it pretty hard out in Yarramalong and Durrong valleys. A lot of people wanted to download it or find out what it was about. Hardly any interaction after they got it.
Okay. Councillor Smith.
Chair, I've just got a couple of questions. It was my understanding that we had a couple of fires, or at least one, if not a couple, that had originated with a pole burn over the past 12 months. Are you aware of those?
Look, we do receive reports of pile burns that have been carried out either illegally or have maybe gotten out of control or burning the wrong items, where we do then investigate what has gone on, and if there's not specifically aware of pile burns and fires on the broader scale, but part of our consultation was through RFS and also Fire and Rescue New South Wales.
Okay, sorry. Do we have the figures from RFS about how many pole burns have been done in the last on an annual basis?
Not on the actual numbers, no.
They're meant to be notified, aren't they?
They are meant to be notified. We do have the figures. based on how many complaints we've received in relation to different types of burning, which I think was really important, looking at suburbs where people have experienced the side effects from smoke pollution. And surprisingly, those more concentrated suburbs, so where you've got pockets of tighter and dense rural residential areas, there weren't as many complaints as what you would expect there to be if there was a significant smoke nuisance problem. We did receive the most number of complaints out in the Gillaby area and Colnura, and a lot of the Colnura ones in particular relate to agricultural funds, which aren't covered under this policy.
All right. Chair, I'll just speak against this, and I do thank and appreciate the improvements that have been made. But I guess without wanting to go too far back in history, the difference between Gosford and Wyong councils is that Wyong had a pole burn policy and Gosford believed to protect the environment. And so their process was RFS had to go out and issue a permit for a pole burn. So that's the option of not having the pole burn policy. I understand, is that still the option?
So RFS will still issue that permit.
They don't like it, but yeah.
I guess council being able to resource to go and issue their permit as well, because the permit the council does is under the Protection of Environment Operations Act. So it's a pollution permit, essentially. So us having this deemed approval process, I guess, covers off some of those pollution aspects, whereas RFS are looking at the safety aspects.
Okay, except that we actually don't know how many pole burns there are, so we don't really know what it's doing.
Because it's a deemed approval.
Yeah, so we've got no idea. And look, my other big concern is that it applies to C2 land, the highest conservation land, or zoning for conservation. And so in my view, it's not appropriate on C2 land. So, so I'll be voting against it.
Okay, the recommendation is there. To move for the recommendation. Well, it looks like it's up to you.
Telling him.
No. Thank you. Is there a second? I'll second it. Is there any further discussion? All right, I'll put it. Those in favour? Councillor Merlin, Councillor Eaton against. Councillor Smith, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Castles. The motion is lost. We have a new motion.
My motion would be that council notes the draft policy and seeks further information on the number of pole burns being carried out in the area on an annual basis over the last 3 years from RFS and anybody else that knows the answer to that question, and then considers or provides further information about if council did not have a current pole burning policy in place, the mechanism for landowners to undertake pole burns. Sorry, did anybody get that wording? Because I don't know if I can repeat it. So there was a part one that we know. Oh, well, we don't even need to note it.
We'll wait a bit until we've got some words and you can approve the words.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So number 2 was, I think, get some figures or request further information from RFS regarding number of pole burns on an annual basis for the last 3 years in our LGA, obviously. The next part was further information from staff on the option of not having the pole burn policy in terms of issuing permits for pole burns.
If I could just give council a bit of information. The policy gives us an exemption under the POEO Act to allow pole burning. If we don't have a policy, there's no exemption for pole burn. So just making councillors aware that technically there's no ability to do pole burning if we don't have a policy. Yep.
Well, can I get some clarification on that? Because there weren't policies, councils weren't required to have a policy.
Well,
In which case RFS would go and issue permits. So is that no longer the case?
in my view, the old policy is still in place until
Just another.
developed or replaced by a new policy.
I haven't removed the old policy. I've asked for further information about an alternate to having a policy.
We'd have to bring it back to council, but we've got legal advice that says it, but we don't have approval, but I don't have that with me right now. We'd have to provide that to you separately. So, but I just wanted to make you aware that there is a question about pole burning at the moment.
Okay. Councillor Smith, can you have a look at the wording?
Citizen rights requests.
Probably want to note the report to start with, don't you?
Yes.
You don't have to.
We can note the report. Look, we all know it's not going to go anywhere. So one is note the report. Number two is request staff provide further information from RFS regarding number of pole burns on an annual basis for the last 3 years. Request further information from, are we staff or do we need to say the CEO still? Request further information on the alternate strategy to not having a pole burning policy in place. With regards to the role of RFS in issuing permits.
I don't think.
Well, just, yeah.
Yeah, I think the way it's alternative, obviously they'll look at that issue. So you have enough with that, Councillor Smith?
From
perfect,
staff regarding not having a council per pole burning policy in place.
I just suggest you use maybe CEO, request CEO provide further information from CEO.
Oh, I should have asked. Oh, we'll need a seconder, obviously, for that. Councillor Castles, thank you. Yeah.
Let's see, provide further information regarding not having alternatives to having place.
Oh, yeah, councils.
And maybe that could include how council could better monitor pole burning. It's
Sure the director's taken a note of that.
sorry?
Sure the director's taken a note of that. All right, that's moved by Councillor Smith. Second.
Can I just mention an amendment that just to say that this information be brought back to the next EMP meeting, which would be in, where are we now? April? April. It's March now. Yeah. April Environment and Planning meeting. Yeah.
We all happy that we know what the.
We do understand that wording isn't quite right.
Yes, I think it'll be fixed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll put those in favour. Smith, Councillor Millen, Councillor Welch, Councillor Castles, against, Councillor Eck. Where that carried.
Sorry, can I ask who second?
Councillor Castles. Next item is pod 2.8. Review of Transport Oriented Development Program. Anyone else know anything about this one? No, Councillor Castles wanted the Gara thing, I think.
I think it was 2.11.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got a question.
Yes. Councillor McNamara.
And they call pod as the transport, right? going around railway stations mainly, but what about bus interchanges like Erina and Lakehaven?
That's exactly what I was going to say. So
there you go. But yeah, that's kind of the bit I didn't quite understand. Do you know why specifically they're after train stations?
It's mainly focused on Sydney, and
okay.
It's the answer.
So, and it's whilst it is, they've titled it transport orientated development. It's actually just a state program where they've targeted consolidation around train stations. So definitely transport orientated development would be broader, but the state program is very tight around train stations.
If we were to ask them what is would they expand their intent to bus hubs such as Erina and Lokehaven?
There'd be nothing stopping us asking them, Councillor.
It's good. We've seen that the state government identified Lakehaven as a potential growth area.
They approved or approving the big development up there at Canwood. So I just thought that. I'm not a member of the.
No,
I would suggest something.
Exactly what I was going to said. It was exactly what I was going to raise, Councillor McCormack. And so I'd be probably a 3. But I think we should get a bit of a report from the staff first.
Yeah, I agree.
So we've actually got some basis when we write to the department. So maybe 3.
Request for staff to provide a report on the opportunities to expand TODs around bus interchanges.
Such as Erina and Lakehaven. I think we should actually nominate.
They're the two logical.
I think they're the 2 logical ones.
Have we got on the hear from?
We don't have, yeah. So I'll move that. Are we getting the wording right? Councillor Merlin, second that.
Got another question.
Sorry.
It's only a report.
Yeah, look at mine. Provide. Yes.
Councillor Washington, it's only a report.
Yeah. Expanding the TOD.
Although I do think it's a reasonable thing to look at. Councillor McNamara had another question.
Through you, Chair, to the Director. The Housing Construction Authority has got a lot more power these days, I think, even than the TOD process. I understand, I mean, this is all about Woy Woy. I understand the Housing Construction Authority are looking at something at Woy Woy that's even bigger than what the TOD would provide. Do you know anything about that?
So you can put an expression of interest into what the state government call the Housing Delivery Authority, which is a number of a panel of 3 state secretaries, and that authority has the power, if it agrees to your proposal, to do a development application and a rezoning at the same time, and they've got approval to approve it outside the planning controls apply. So it's merit. So they can do a rezoning to change the planning controls at the same time.
And that planning controls, you're saying that they override the TOD?
Yeah, that's they potentially change the planning controls as they to allow the approval of the development application. So what it looks like in practice is if you've got acceptance, and there's a lot of expression of interest and they'll accept a number of them, but then they'll actually consider potentially a much bigger development that you'd be allowed to north.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Yes, Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Can I just ask, I know that all of this is happening because of the minutes of the Business New South Wales Integrated Chamber meeting. Can the committee get a copy of those minutes? And like, is that a meeting that you attended, Director?
I didn't attend it, but a number of directors and the CEO from council attended various meetings. But yeah, there is. I would normally attend it. I didn't attend that meeting.
And I chair it.
Oh, you chair it? I didn't think the chamber on the peninsula really
Oh, there's,
Much of a thing.
there's the hinterland, there's,
No, but this has come from the
yeah, this
peninsula.
one's come from. That was one of the action items out of the integrated chain.
Right. Look, I am a little bit concerned about this, and particularly now the addition of Erina, knowing the gridlock around Erina that already exists. So does this come with funding to upgrade roads and networks, transport infrastructure around these pods?
Correct.
That's, Shannon? Okay, not directly, but if this, what happens is that when the state accepts it as a tier 1 TOD, what they've done is they then look at the potential infrastructure needs of those areas, and there'd be a potentially higher development contribution rate that they put in relation to those tier 1 TODs. So not directly, but there is a process the government would go through to actually look at infrastructure and how it's funded.
Okay, but it's gridlocked now, so developer contributions would probably be 10 years before there was any upgrades. So we're just be saying to our residents, that's okay, you sit in traffic because we're going to do this. I guess I'd be more open to the consideration of Woy Woy. I'd certainly like to consult with my community down in that ward. But I guess I'd be more open to it if some of that excess funding we've all been talking about was allocated to enhancing the livability and the transport networks and the amenity around these areas, whereas it seems to me that that's not where I'm going to get a result. So I will vote against it.
Further discussion? I'll put that. All those in favour? Councillor Milne and Councillor Eaton against. Councillor Smith, Councillor Welch. So the motion's lost. What do you want to do?
It's just lost.
Okay, that's fine. No, if you don't, I agree. If you don't want to move another motion, there's no need to do it. Okay, we'll move to the next item, which is 2.9, the pesticides in Tascott and Brisbane water. McGregor, I think you
on that, or
no. This one. Mr. McGregor, I think you wanted to ask questions on this.
I thought there might be some on it, but fair enough if there's not. I've read through it this afternoon, but if I could have a further read and then maybe send through some stuff on the rest of that in terms of questions, I'm happy to do that.
All right.
So.
Any other discussion? Somebody want to move the recommendation?
So again, can I just ask, I noticed it made reference to the glyphosate and the community concerns, and is our council, and sorry if it's in the report, I've just missed it, is our council considering other options to,
like what? So looking at other measures to control weeds, whether it be heat measures or other control options available to eliminate the need to utilise pesticides. At the moment, we use them under EPL licence through the EPA with strict controls on how we go about utilising them, and also in accordance with all the national requirements for utilising pesticide sprays.
Okay, and I think the report said we're not actively monitoring in that area, are we?
We're not actively monitoring water quality for those parameters. We do for other parameters.
Could I actually move an amendment that we
no motion, so you can motion.
Well, I'll move that as part 1, and part B is that council implement an active monitoring program for these target chemicals for a period of, say, 6 months. I mean, I just want to know the data. I'm sure other people have had people contact them about pelican deaths and impacts on the waterway. So I'd like to be clear on what the answer is, because I think we're kind of saying there's not a problem, but we're not doing the monitoring.
Just be clear, Councillor Smith, are you just saying, because this was only in Got in Brisbane Water, are you saying in all the waterways?
Oh, no, sorry, down in the Tascott and Brisbane Water in particular, probably near the Pelican Colony, if like, yeah, down Woy Woy. And I assume out of the stormwater drains, not just general ambient water quality, but the stormwater drains in particular.
Councillor Smith, because we don't know the cost of that, would you be open to just a report on council implementing an active monitoring program? Then we'd be able to work it out for you.
That's fine. Thank you.
Just a follow-on question from that, if I may. The oyster leases, do they get tested externally? Like, how does that work?
Oyster leases are monitored by DPI or Department of Primary Industries. I assume that they would do testing for a range of parameters, but specifically they test for.
And sorry, is it understood that monitoring program for 6 months isn't once in 6 months? Just to be clear, that it's a reasonable amount of monitoring. Yeah.
So it's a report. All right, that was moved by that was moved by Councillor Smith. There was a seconder. Councillor Welch, thank you. Any further debate on that? I'll put that. All those in favour? Unanimous. No reports on it. Just
when you thought Doug would.
Yeah, sorry to disappoint you.
We should have taken that.
Watch report.
Okay, I think our last item is 211, the state significant development and major projects update. Councillor Castles.
Yeah, look, I just had a question which I have no idea whether it can be answered. But I was looking through the table.
Shannon, is this your baby?
It wasn't the Mingara one. Okay, so and I was looking at where are we? DA 1069/2025. Which is at Bent Street, the entrance. It says it's under assessment. It mentions demolition of existing dwellings. I know the street utilises and relocation of the heritage building. And I believe the heritage building is number 5 Bent Street. Today, I'm just sort of curious whether anybody can give me any information about what this means, relocate. Does it mean relocate on the site? Does it mean relocate somewhere else? Because, you know, generally with anything to do with heritage, it's not about the building, it's the context in which it actually, in a sense, lives, you know, in that community. I just wondered if somebody knew insight into that. Happy to take it on notice. I don't have an issue with that.
Confirming, councillor, which one it was?
It's one DA 1069/2025.
Okay.
Bent Street, the entrance.
Demolition of the existing dwelling, consolidation.
Relocation of heritage building.
Yeah, I mean, we could find more detail for you.
Yeah.
It's not our assessment.
No, I realised that, but I just was a bit, so I thought that's seemed unusual that you would, I can see that it's a building that could be relocated by the looks of it, you know, one of those small, very sort of typical heritagey.
I could send you some information after this, a bit more. We could dig out a bit more detail.
That would be good. Thank you. That was all, Chair. I just was fascinated about what's going to happen.
I had a question on the Mingara seniors housing, and I agree with all of the points in the submission. We seem to make a great deal out of the units requiring 2 cars per villa. I would have thought seniors, that sort of seniors housing, hardly anyone has 2 cars. They mostly would have had.
Well, I was at Terrigal Glen yesterday, and I'm telling you, lots have got 2 cars.
We got any statistics on? You might be right, Councillor Welch. I've just my perspective, and so I just wondered if we actually could do some research and check on.
I don't know if it's a majority.
And sure you're not thinking more aged care as opposed
This is aged care. It's very much aged care.
It's still very active.
Because this one actually has I understand it from There's also, what do you call them?
You're talking about the main
Nursing home within it as well.
Yeah.
Now that, obviously the parking doesn't apply to the nursing home, but
Yeah, so-
to me that implies that they're quite elderly people likely to go in there.
But Chair, what they do have is multi-layered care. So they start off with a retirement, which is basically a freestanding home with someone who may still be in their mid-60s. Yeah, as young. And then it's sort of they progress as they age and become more frail. They progress into higher levels of care. So the people in retirement villages, like in the actual cottages.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Neil. I do understand that, although I understand the average age for going into seniors living now is about 82.
How old are you?
Not that
No,
old.
not for retirement homes. That's not correct.
I think you'll find it. But anyhow, it was just an issue that I wanted to bring up, and I'll talk to the director about it separately. But the rest of what was in the submission, I entirely agree with, and does say that the villas are designed for two. So if they're designed like if they have two,
They will have two cars.
then they need to provide for that to be, So I mean, there's an issue about stack parking, and then garages being in front of the villas, which generally is not allowed in any sort of residential house. So I think everything else there was valid. Anyhow, that's the only question I wanted to ask. So the recommendation is there. We want to move that?
I'm going to move that.
Thank you, Councillor Welsh, the seconding. Any further discussion? I'll put it all those in favour. Carried unanimously. Thank you. That concludes our meeting.
Yes. Just we normally just be starting.
This is what I was really happy about it being on.
We got dinner. I suspect not.
No, there isn't there?
Oh, is there? Okay, all right. Oh, I wasn't actually.
I think it's quite light, but.
I'm actually.